Hello everyone. Just thought today that I would share a little bit about our great uncle Vernon. And I was going to do it in my backyard under an oak tree that I have back there, but today in Clovis, New Mexico, it's 19 degrees with the wind chill of about 2 degrees. So I decided not to do that. But just thought I'd share a couple of things about Vernon. We used to go over there quite a bit. My dad and I would when I was pretty little. We'd hang out at Vernon sometimes, and one time we were over there. We were sitting outside under an oak tree, and Vernon, he liked to share opinions. He liked to share what he thought about certain topics like Ronald Reagan and Reaganomics. He was pretty vocal about that and different things. And so one day he got onto this topic about drugs and alcohol, and he pointed over at me and he said, "This boy right here," he said, "I'm going to tell you what," he said, "it's impossible for a high school student to go through school and not get addicted to drugs and alcohol." And he pointed at me specifically. He said, "This boy right here," he said, "when he gets out of high school, he'll be messed up on drugs or alcohol or both." Well, that kind of set me off on the inside. I didn't take too well to that. And so honestly, throughout my middle school and high school career, anytime I was offered alcohol or drugs, which I didn't get offered many drugs, but alcohol I did. Anytime something like that would happen, two reasons why I didn't touch it. First of all, because of my relationship with God, and then number two, because Vernon said that, and I wanted to prove him wrong. And so I went through, my middle school and high school, and never had a problem with drugs or alcohol. So the day after I graduated high school, I went to Vernon's house, and I sat down with him and I said, "Vernon, I want to remind you. Do you remember saying what you said about it's impossible for a high school student to graduate and not have a problem with alcohol?" And he actually didn't remember it, which kind of ticked me off because I was like, "Well, what the heck?" But anyway, I said, "Well, you did say it, and here's what you said." And I told him, and I said, "So I came over here specifically to tell you thank you for saying that, because here I am today, and I don't have a problem with either one, and you're one of the reasons why." And he laughed and he said, "Well, good." He said, "I'm glad I was able to help you through with that." And so anyway, that felt pretty good. But then there was another time when we were sitting under his tree and he was telling stories like he usually did, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, just out of the blue, he looked over at me, and he liked to have nicknames for people. And he said, he just looked at me and he goes, "Alan Redbreast." And when he said that, it was just kind of out of the blue. What he didn't know was I had just had a science lesson, and that lesson was over birds. It was over the robin redbreast and the yellow-bellied sapsucker. And so when he said that, he said, "Alan Redbreast." And I just looked back at him, and just like that, I just come up and I said, "Vernon Sapsucker." And he got tickled at that, and he could not quit laughing. And he just said, "Did you hear how fast he come back with that?" Well, like I say, the reason why it came back so fast is because he didn't know that I had just had this science lesson over robin redbreast and yellow-bellied sapsuckers. So from then on, for several years, every time he would see me, he would call me Alan Redbreast, and I'd call him Vernon Sapsucker. Well, a year or two after that, Gina mentioned this in one of her posts earlier. She talked about Vernon's recording, his telephone recording machine, answering machine. And he would always put messages on there. He would say, he would get real serious and he'd say, "This is Vernon Isaacs." And that's how he would start his message, and then he would, go on with his message, and it was pretty funny. And usually if you called him while he had that machine, he wouldn't answer it because he wanted you to hear his message. And then once he found out who it was, he'd call you back to talk to you, but he wouldn't answer it because he wanted you to hear that message. So one day I called him because I wanted to leave a message of my own. But he answered the phone that time, and I said, "Vernon," I said, "here I am trying to leave you a good message, and you answered the phone. I said, now hang up. I'm going to call you back, and you don't answer it because I'm going to leave you a message. He said, okay. He said, so he did. He hung up, and I called him back, and I had written a little poem. And here's what it said. It said, you know, Vernon, they all tell me that your wine tastes swell, but I don't drink booze, so how can I tell? But if you decide to tell a story under the old oak tree, don't you call anybody else until you've called me. I like to hear those old stories. They make me laugh real hard till I'm plumb worn out and feeling kind of tired. You know, talking to this machine is like taking a test. So I'll say goodbye, sapsucker, from Alan Redbreast. So I left that on his message, and just a minute or two later, he called me back, and he was just rolling on the floor. And for several weeks after that, I had people coming to me, and like my grandpa Beecher, he'd say, I heard that message you had on Vernon's machine. He said, I went over there, and Vernon made me go in the house and listen to it. So, there was just so many things that happened and memories that we have with Vernon that I won't ever forget. When Raymond died back in the mid-'80s, Papa Jess was at our house there in Kanawha. And we had just sat down to eat a dinner. And I remember the phone rang, and my dad went and answered the phone, and the news came that Raymond had passed away. And that was the first child that Papa Jess raised that had passed away after Mom Isaacs died. And I remember my dad told him, and he was like, well, he said, okay. And then we all sat down, we were getting ready to eat, and Papa Jess prayed. And when he prayed, he broke down and just cried. And he said, Lord, he said, hold my baby. Raymond wasn't a baby, but he was saying, hold my baby. He said, please, Lord, hold my baby. And it's nice to know that the grace of God is sufficient for all of us, and there's mercies that are new every day. And today, not only is Jesus holding Vernon, but Papa Jess and Mom Isaacs are there holding him too. It's a good day. It's a good day. And so this is my video and my way of just saying goodbye, sapsucker, from Alan Redbreast.